The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval training facility in Coronado, California. Commander Jake Reynolds stood on the observation deck, watching his elite team of Navy SEALs prepare for what would become one of the most challenging exercises of their careers. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Each man had survived the grueling Bud/training, endured Hell Week, and proven themselves in combat zones across the globe. They were the best of the best, forged through pain, discipline, and an unbreakable brotherhood. The exercise scheduled for that day was a comprehensive survival and evasion drill, designed to test every skill these warriors had learned. The terrain chosen was unforgiving, a dense forest region in the mountains of Southern California, complete with rocky cliffs, hidden caves, and treacherous ravines. The mission parameters were simple yet brutal. The SEALs would be dropped into hostile territory with minimal equipment and tasked with reaching an extraction point 30 miles away within 72 hours, all while being hunted by a team of highly trained trackers. What made this exercise particularly challenging was the addition of civilian contractors who would act as enemy combatants. These weren't regular military personnel, but specialized hunters, survivalists, and former special forces operators from various branches who had been hired to make the exercise as realistic as possible. The SEALs knew they would face tracking dogs, thermal imaging equipment, and adversaries who understood their tactics and training methods. Team leader Lieutenant Marcus Thompson gathered his squad of 8 men around the mission briefing table. Each SEAL represented years of investment and training. There was Rodriguez, the team's communications expert who could establish contact with base from virtually anywhere. Jackson served as their demolition specialist, capable of creating explosives from everyday materials. Williams was their medical corpsman, trained to perform field surgery under the most extreme conditions. The roster continued with experts in reconnaissance, sniper operations, underwater demolitions, and close-quarters combat. As Thompson outlined the mission parameters, something felt different about this particular exercise. The briefing officers seemed unusually secretive about certain aspects of the operation. When questioned about the exact number and composition of the opposing force, the responses were vague and evasive. The SEALs were told only that they should expect the unexpected, and that this exercise would test not just their physical capabilities, but their ability to adapt to completely unforeseen circumstances. The helicopter ride to the drop zone was filled with the usual pre-mission banter and equipment checks. These men had trained together for over 3 years, developing an almost telepathic understanding of each other's movements and reactions. They could communicate through subtle hand signals, operate in complete darkness, and function as a single unified organism when necessary. Their confidence was well-founded, built upon countless successful missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other classified locations around the world. The aircraft touched down briefly in a small clearing, just long enough for the team to disembark with their minimal gear. Each SEAL carried only basic survival equipment: a knife, water purification tablets, emergency rations for 24 hours, and a radio beacon that would only activate at the designated extraction point. No weapons, no advanced communication devices, no GPS units. This was meant to simulate being behind enemy lines after a mission had gone wrong and all standard equipment had been lost or compromised. Within minutes of the helicopter's departure, the team had melted into the forest using techniques perfected over years of training. They moved in a standard patrol formation, with Point Man Johnson leading the way and Thompson bringing up the rear. The forest was thick with undergrowth and fallen trees, making silent movement extremely challenging. Every step had to be calculated to avoid snapping branches or disturbing wildlife that might alert the hunters to their presence. The first sign that something unusual was happening came approximately 6 hours into the mission. Rodriguez, who was monitoring radio frequencies on a small handheld receiver, picked up communications between the hunter teams that didn't match their expected patterns. Instead of the systematic, methodical search protocols they had anticipated, the radio chatter suggested confusion and unexpected complications. The hunters were reporting strange observations and requesting clarification from their command center about changes to the original plan. As darkness fell on the first day, the SEALs established a temporary bivouac in a natural depression surrounded by dense vegetation. They had covered nearly 12 miles of extremely difficult terrain and were pleased with their progress. The extraction point was still 2 days away, but they had successfully avoided all contact with the hunter teams and left virtually no trace of their passage through the forest. It was during the night watch rotation that Petty Officer Williams first noticed the unusual tracks. While conducting a security sweep around their position, His trained eye caught sight of boot prints in a muddy stream bed that didn't match the standard military footwear worn by either the SEALs or the expected hunter teams. The prints appeared to be from lightweight hiking boots, sized for someone with much smaller feet than any of the men on either team. More puzzling still, the tracking pattern suggested someone moving with extraordinary stealth and awareness of advanced evasion techniques. Thompson examined the tracks by flashlight, using techniques learned from Native American trackers during specialized training courses. The person who had made these prints was moving faster than should have been possible through this terrain while maintaining such careful placement of each step. The depth and spacing of the impressions suggested someone carrying minimal weight, possibly a small pack or no equipment at all. Most disturbing was the fact that the track seemed to be paralleling the SEAL's route, staying approximately half a mile to the north but maintaining the same general direction toward the extraction point. When morning came, the team resumed their movement with heightened awareness of their mysterious shadow. Jackson, their most experienced tracker, found additional signs of the unknown person's passage. A bent branch here, a disturbed pile of leaves there, marks so subtle that they would have been invisible to anyone without extensive training in wilderness tracking. Whoever was moving through these mountains possessed skills that rivaled or exceeded their own, yet appeared to be operating completely outside the parameters of the training exercise. Radio intercepts throughout the second day painted an increasingly confusing picture. The hunter teams were reporting multiple false contacts and seemed to be chasing shadows throughout the forest. Several times they claimed to have cornered the SEALs only to find empty woodland when they closed in. Equipment was malfunctioning in ways that defied explanation. Tracking dogs were becoming agitated and refusing to follow scent trails that should have been clearly marked. The exercise commanders were growing frustrated with the apparent incompetence of their hired hunters, unaware that something extraordinary was taking place in the mountains. By the afternoon of the second day, the SEALs had made excellent progress toward their objective despite the increasingly strange circumstances surrounding their mission. They had successfully avoided all contact with the opposing force and were beginning to believe they might complete the exercise without being detected at all. This confidence was shattered when Rodriguez picked up a radio transmission that changed everything they thought they knew about their situation. The transmission was brief and partially garbled, but the key phrases were unmistakable. The hunter teams were reporting contact with an unknown individual who appeared to be operating independently of both the SEALs and the exercise controllers. This person had been observed moving through areas that should have been impassable, disappearing from thermal imaging systems, and somehow interfering with the hunters' equipment and communications. Most shocking of all, the descriptions being radioed back to command suggested that this mysterious operative was a woman operating alone in some of the most challenging wilderness terrain in North America. Thompson called an immediate halt to their movement and gathered his team for an emergency conference. In all their years of training and combat operations, none of them had encountered a situation quite like this. The exercise had been carefully planned and controlled, with every participant accounted for and briefed on their roles. The presence of an unidentified individual, particularly someone with the apparent skills to outmaneuver both Navy SEALs and professional hunters, suggested that their training exercise had somehow intersected with a real-world situation of unknown complexity and potential danger. The decision was made to continue toward the extraction point, while maintaining maximum vigilance and attempting to gather more information about their mysterious fellow traveler. Whatever was happening in these mountains was clearly beyond the scope of a standard training exercise, and the SEALs found themselves facing the most perplexing challenge of their military careers. None of them could have imagined that their encounter with the unknown woman would fundamentally change their understanding of what was possible in the realm of human capability and endurance. The third morning brought with it a development that would forever change how the SEALs viewed the limits of human possibility. As they prepared to break camp and begin their final push toward the extraction point, Jackson discovered something that defied logical explanation. Arranged in a perfect circle around their sleeping area were 8 small cans, carefully constructed stone markers that had definitely not been present when they had established their position the previous evening. Each can was identical in construction, built from precisely 5 stones stacked in ascending size from bottom to top. The placement was so exact that Thompson initially suspected some form of surveying equipment had been used, but there were no tool marks or any other signs of mechanical construction. More puzzling still, the stones used in the cans were not native to the immediate area but appeared to have been gathered from various locations throughout the forest, suggesting that whoever had created them possessed an intimate knowledge of the terrain extending far beyond their current position. Williams, who had maintained the final watch of the night, insisted that no one had approached their camp. As the team's most experienced sentry, he had remained alert throughout his 4-hour duty period and was certain that any human approach would have been detected. The cans had appeared silently, without any disturbance to the natural sounds of the forest or any alteration in the behavior of the local wildlife that typically served as an early warning system for approaching humans. Rodriguez made another disturbing discovery when he conducted his morning radio check. The frequencies used by the hunter teams were now filled with reports of equipment failures, communication breakdowns, and increasingly frantic attempts to re-establish control over what had become a chaotic situation. Multiple teams were reporting that their tracking equipment was providing contradictory information, leading them in circles or directing them toward locations where no human presence could be detected. Several hunters had become separated from their units and were requesting assistance to navigate back to established rendezvous points. Most unsettling were the reports filtering back to Exercise Command about the mysterious woman who seemed to be moving throughout the forest like a phantom. Descriptions varied wildly between different observer teams, but certain details remained consistent. She appeared to be of average height and build, dressed in earth-toned clothing that seemed to blend seamlessly with the natural environment. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a practical manner that wouldn't interfere with movement through dense vegetation. Most remarkably, every witness described her as moving with an almost supernatural grace and awareness that allowed her to traverse terrain that would challenge even the most experienced outdoorsman. The SEALs resumed their movement with a mixture of professional curiosity and growing unease. Their training had prepared them for virtually every conceivable combat scenario, but this situation fell outside all established parameters. They were dealing with someone who possessed skills that seemed to exceed even their own considerable capabilities, yet who appeared to pose no direct threat to their mission or their safety. The cans left around their camp could be interpreted as either a warning or a greeting, but the precision of their placement suggested a level of awareness and capability that demanded respect. As they moved deeper into the forest, the signs of the woman's presence became more frequent and more obvious. She was no longer simply shadowing their movement, but was actively leaving markers for them to find. A perfectly woven grass knot hung from a branch at eye level, clearly placed where Thompson would spot it immediately. 3 smooth river stones were arranged in a triangle on a fallen log that served as a natural bridge across a small ravine. An intricate pattern was traced in the dust of a game trail, too complex to have been created by any animal and too precise to have been accidental. Jackson, who had spent considerable time studying tracking and wilderness survival with various indigenous peoples around the world, recognized that the markers were following a traditional pattern used by some Native American tribes to communicate information about safe routes and potential dangers. However, the specific symbols being used were unlike anything he had encountered in his extensive training, suggesting a knowledge base that drew from multiple cultural traditions or possibly represented a completely unique system developed through personal experience. The afternoon brought their first direct visual contact with the woman who had been haunting their exercise for 3 days. Rodriguez, who was serving as the team's point man, spotted her approximately 200 meters ahead, standing motionless beside a large boulder that overlooked a narrow valley they needed to cross. She made no attempt to hide or flee when she noticed his attention, instead raising one hand in what appeared to be a peaceful greeting before disappearing behind the rock formation, with movements so fluid they seemed almost supernatural. Thompson led his team to the position where she had been standing, expecting to find tracks, disturbed vegetation, or some other sign of her presence. Instead, they discovered another carefully constructed message, a detailed map of the surrounding area, drawn in charcoal on the smooth surface of the boulder. The map was accurate to an extraordinary degree, showing not only the major geographical features but also the current positions of all the hunter teams, marked with symbols that could only have been created by someone who had been observing the entire exercise from a position of complete concealment. More remarkable still, the map indicated a route to the extraction point that would avoid all contact with the hunter teams, while reducing their travel time by nearly 6 hours. The path marked on the boulder led through terrain that appeared impassable on their standard military maps, but which, according to the charcoal drawing, contained hidden passages and natural bridges that would allow rapid movement while remaining completely invisible to any pursuit. The decision to trust the information provided by their mysterious guide represented a significant departure from standard operational protocols. SEALs were trained to rely on their own reconnaissance and planning rather than intelligence provided by unknown sources. However, the woman had demonstrated such extraordinary awareness of their situation and such remarkable skill in wilderness movement that her information carried a credibility that couldn't be ignored. After a brief team conference, Thompson made the decision to follow the route indicated on the stone map. The path proved to be everything the map had promised and more. What had appeared to be solid cliff faces on their military charts revealed hidden crevices just wide enough for a single person to pass through. Natural caves provided shelter and concealment while allowing rapid movement through areas that would have required hours of difficult climbing using conventional routes. Stream beds that seemed too shallow to provide cover turned out to have deeper channels carved by years of water flow, creating natural trenches that completely hid their movement from any elevated observation. As they followed the hidden route, the SEALs began to encounter more direct evidence of their guide's presence and capabilities. At crucial decision points, they found small arrows scratched into tree bark or stones, pointing toward the correct path when the route became unclear. Dangerous areas were marked with simple warning symbols that prevented them from walking into unstable ground or approaching areas where hunter teams were positioned in ambush. Most impressive were the locations where natural obstacles had been quietly modified to ease their passage. Loose rocks had been cleared from narrow ledges, thorny branches had been carefully bent aside to widen passages, and small bridges had been constructed from fallen logs to span difficult creek crossings. The woman herself remained a fleeting presence throughout their journey, occasionally visible as a distant figure on a ridge or a shadow moving through the trees ahead of their position. She never approached close enough for conversation, but maintained a protective overwatch of their movement that was both comforting and deeply puzzling. Her ability to remain ahead of their position while simultaneously monitoring the locations and movements of the hunter teams suggested a level of situational awareness that bordered on the impossible. Radio intercepts continued to paint a picture of increasing chaos among the opposition forces. Hunter teams were reporting equipment failures, navigation errors, and false contacts that led them away from the SEALs' actual position. Several groups had become completely lost and required helicopter assistance to extract them from areas where they had become trapped by terrain they couldn't navigate. The exercise controllers were struggling to maintain any semblance of organization, as their carefully planned operation dissolved into confusion and frustration. By evening of the third day, the SEALs had reached a position less than 5 miles from their extraction point, well ahead of schedule and without having been detected by any of the hunter teams. They established their final camp in a natural shelter that provided excellent concealment while offering multiple escape routes if their position was compromised. The location had obviously been selected by their mysterious guide, as evidenced by subtle modifications to the natural landscape that improved both its defensive capabilities and its comfort for overnight occupancy. As darkness fell, Thompson found himself reflecting on the extraordinary events of the past 3 days. His team had completed what was supposed to be one of the most challenging exercises in their training curriculum with an ease that seemed almost supernatural. Guided by someone whose skills exceeded anything they had encountered in their military careers, the woman had demonstrated capabilities in wilderness survival, tracking, evasion, and tactical awareness that suggested training and experience far beyond what any conventional military or civilian program could provide. The final mystery would reveal itself with the dawn of the 4th day, when the SEALs would discover the true identity and background of the woman who had transformed their training exercise into an unforgettable lesson about the unlimited potential of human capability and determination. Dawn on the 4th day brought with it the resolution of the mystery that had captivated and challenged the Navy SEALs throughout their extraordinary training exercise. As the team prepared for their final approach to the extraction point, they discovered a carefully folded piece of paper tucked beneath a stone near their sleeping area. The paper contained a handwritten message in precise, feminine script that would fundamentally change their understanding of what they had experienced over the past 3 days. The letter was brief but revelatory. It identified their mysterious guide as Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a former Army Special Forces operator who had transitioned to civilian life after completing multiple classified missions in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, her story extended far beyond conventional military service. Following her discharge, Dr. Mitchell had spent 7 years living with and learning from indigenous peoples in some of the most remote wilderness areas on Earth. She had trained with Inuit hunters in the Arctic, learned jungle survival from Amazonian tribes, studied desert navigation with Bedouin nomads, and mastered mountain climbing techniques from Sherpa guides in the Himalayas. What made Dr. Mitchell's background even more remarkable was her academic credentials. She held advanced degrees in anthropology, environmental science, and human psychology, with specialized research focusing on extreme human performance under survival conditions. Her doctoral dissertation had examined the physiological and psychological adaptations that allowed certain individuals to excel in wilderness environments where others would quickly perish. She had spent years documenting and analyzing the techniques used by master survivalists from various cultures, synthesizing this knowledge into a comprehensive understanding of human potential that exceeded anything available through traditional military training. The letter explained that Dr. Mitchell had been hired by the Navy as a civilian contractor to observe and evaluate the performance of elite military units under extreme conditions. Her role in the exercise was to assess how well the SEALs could adapt to truly unexpected circumstances while maintaining their operational effectiveness. However, she had gone far beyond her assigned mission parameters, using the exercise as an opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that challenged conventional assumptions about what was possible in wilderness survival and tactical operations. According to her letter, Dr. Mitchell had been positioned in the forest for 2 weeks prior to the beginning of the exercise, using that time to prepare the hidden routes and create the various markers and modifications that had aided the SEALs in their movement. Her intimate knowledge of the terrain had been developed through months of preliminary reconnaissance, during which she had mapped every cave, identified every natural passage, and catalogued every potential shelter or danger zone throughout the training area. More fascinating still was her explanation of how she had managed to monitor and influence the hunter teams throughout the exercise. Dr. Mitchell revealed that she possessed advanced technical skills that complemented her wilderness abilities, including expertise in electronic surveillance and communication systems. She had used small, virtually undetectable devices to monitor radio communications, track the movements of the opposition forces, and even introduce subtle interference that disrupted their equipment at crucial moments. Her background included training with military intelligence units that had taught her how to manipulate electronic systems in ways that would appear to be natural malfunctions rather than deliberate sabotage. The letter also provided insights into her philosophical approach to wilderness survival and tactical operations. Dr. Mitchell believed that most military training focused too heavily on technology and equipment, while neglecting the fundamental human capabilities that could be developed through proper understanding and practice. She had devoted her post-military career to exploring the absolute limits of what could be achieved through enhanced awareness, physical conditioning, and psychological preparation. Her demonstration during the SEAL exercise represented years of research and training distilled into a practical application that challenged conventional military doctrine. As the SEALs absorbed this information, they began to understand that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary. Dr. Mitchell had not simply outperformed trained military personnel. She had demonstrated an entirely different approach to survival and tactical operations that integrated ancient wisdom with modern knowledge in ways that achieved results beyond what either could accomplish alone. Her ability to move through the wilderness without detection, to anticipate and counter the tactics of multiple opposition teams, and to provide effective guidance while remaining essentially invisible, represented a level of capability that redefined their understanding of human potential. The final approach to the extraction point provided one last demonstration of Dr. Mitchell's remarkable abilities. As the SEALs moved through the final mile of forest, they encountered a situation that could have compromised their entire mission. 2 hunter teams had positioned themselves near the extraction zone in a coordinated ambush that would have been virtually impossible to detect or avoid using conventional tactical approaches. The SEAL team's arrival at the designated time and location would have resulted in their immediate capture and the failure of their training exercise. Dr. Cascari Mitchell had anticipated this final challenge and prepared a solution that showcased the full extent of her capabilities. Using techniques that combined traditional hunting methods with modern psychological warfare, she had created a series of diversions that drew both hunter teams away from the extraction point at the crucial moment. The diversions included carefully placed animal calls that suggested the presence of large predators, electronic interference that made the hunters believe they were receiving new orders to reposition, and subtle environmental modifications that created the impression of SEAL movement in areas far from their actual location. While the hunter teams chased these false leads, Dr. Mitchell provided overwatch for the SEALs' actual extraction, ensuring that their helicopter pickup proceeded without interference. She remained concealed throughout the operation, visible only as a distant figure who raised her hand in a final farewell salute as the aircraft departed with its precious cargo of amazed and humbled Special Forces operators. The debriefing that followed the exercise became legendary within Navy Special Warfare Command. Dr. Mitchell's performance report detailed capabilities that exceeded every metric used to evaluate survival and tactical skills. She had demonstrated the ability to operate independently in wilderness environments for extended periods without resupply, to monitor and manipulate the activities of multiple opposing forces simultaneously, and to provide effective support to friendly forces while maintaining complete operational security. Her integration of traditional survival techniques with modern technology had produced results that challenged fundamental assumptions about military training and capability development. More importantly, Dr. Mitchell's demonstration had profound implications for how elite military units understood their own potential. The SEALs who participated in the exercise returned to their regular duties with an expanded appreciation for what could be achieved through dedication, study, and the willingness to learn from unconventional sources. Several team members sought additional training in wilderness survival and indigenous techniques, while others pursued advanced studies in environmental psychology and human performance optimization. The exercise also led to significant changes in Navy SEAL training protocols. Elements of Dr. Mitchell's approach were incorporated into advanced courses, with emphasis placed on developing enhanced environmental awareness, studying traditional survival techniques from various cultures, and understanding the psychological aspects of extreme performance. Her methods became part of the curriculum for the most elite units within the special operations community, ensuring that her knowledge would continue to benefit future generations of warriors. Dr. Mitchell herself remained an enigmatic figure within the military contractor community. She continued to work with various special forces units around the world, always pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible in human performance and tactical capability. Her legend grew with each assignment as she consistently demonstrated abilities that seemed to transcend conventional limitations while remaining humble and focused on advancing the capabilities of the men and women who served their countries in the most dangerous and challenging environments on Earth. The Navy SEALs who experienced those 3 extraordinary days in the California wilderness never forgot the lesson they learned from their mysterious guide. They had encountered someone who represented the absolute pinnacle of human capability, achieved through a combination of rigorous training, intellectual curiosity, cultural sensitivity, and an unshakable belief in the unlimited potential that exists within every individual who is willing to push beyond the boundaries of what they believe to be possible. Years later, when team members would tell the story of their encounter with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, they would emphasize not just her remarkable skills, but her generosity in sharing her knowledge, and her commitment to advancing the capabilities of those who dedicate their lives to protecting others. She had shown them that the limits they accepted as absolute were often simply the boundaries of their current understanding, and that with proper training, dedication, and openness to learning from unexpected sources, those boundaries could be expanded far beyond what they had ever imagined possible. The impact of her demonstration extended far beyond the individuals who directly experienced it. The story spread throughout the special operations community, inspiring countless military personnel to pursue additional training and to question conventional assumptions about human limitations. Dr. Mitchell had not only stunned a team of elite Navy SEALs with her presence, she had fundamentally changed how the most capable warriors in the world understood their own potential and their possibilities for growth and development throughout their careers.